Hello, my name is Sonny. I am the Ohio Valley Regional Sales Manager for EWC, and we are here today talking about our damper offering from EWC. I want to speak more to the actual features and benefits of our dampers and our control panels and why we think they are the industry-leading dampers and control panels. First of all, I want to talk about the actual motor, the actuator on all of our dampers. If you notice, all of our actuators are exactly the same. These are all Belimo actuators that manufactured by a very strong, reputable motor manufacturer called Belimo. They are made to our standards with our EWC logo on them, and some of the main features that we really love and the contractors really love on our dampers. I'll go through these one at a time and try to associate those with some of our competition. Most of our competition does not have these very innovative features on their actuators. First of all, I will point out that this is a 3-wire power open, power closed actuator. It is a 35-second travel time, meaning that it takes 35 seconds to go from fully closed to open. We will lock there and drop power to the motor. 35 seconds from fully open to closed, and we will lock there and drop power to the motor. Most of my competition out there in the zoning world has a 2-wire spring return actuator that springs open and powers closed. Constantly there is power on that damper that will, over time, reduce the lifespan of that motor because there is power on it all the time. If you notice that I was manipulating this damper with a manual gear button, a manual gear release. After this damper has been installed, you do have the ability to reposition the damper. As a contractor, knowing that our dampers rest in the open position, when you are checking out or commissioning the system to see if everything is working properly, you can force my damper when no call for heat or cooling is there at the control board. You can force my damper to the closed position and my damper will automatically rotate back open because it knows there's no power there or there's no call for heat or cooling, and it will automatically rotate back to the open position, thereby allowing you to see if the damper is operating correctly, if it's jammed or it's hung up. All those situations can be quickly determined with just moving that damper to the closed position and watching it go back. One of the other nice features that the EWC dampers have, and I'm talking more with spending all the time on this URD damper, the round damper, but all of my dampers have the same features and benefits, okay, because they are all the same actuator. One of the nice features that contractors love is the robustness of this actuator. This actuator has 18 inch-pounds of torque. Most of my competition out there that are 2-wire spring return dampers, they are between 3.5 to 4.5 pounds of torque. I am 4 times stronger than my nearest competitor, and I am also able to handle higher static pressures. Those instances where I am exceeding 1 inch of static pressure, most of my competition has a hard time opening or closing in those situations. With the EWC damper having 18 inch-pounds of torque, I can easily handle over 1 inch of static pressure. We advertise and commonly will handle static pressures up to and including 1.5 inches of static pressure. So therefore, we can operate in your residential and your light commercial zoning world. Another nice feature that we have incorporated onto this damper is our very low amp draw. In a new construction situation where you only have a couple dampers, 2 to 3 dampers, really doesn't come into play very often. But when you get over 3 dampers, my competition, because they draw so much power, my 2-wire competitors out there draw anywhere from 8 to 12 volt amperages. We only draw 1.5, allowing us to put many dampers on a 40 VA transformer without any additional relays, without any additional wiring. This is very crucial when you're in a retrofit situation or anytime you're over 2 dampers. With the spring return dampers, they have to add add-on transformers and relays, which is very commonly known as a wiring nightmare. Moving on, one of the other nice features is, and I asked our competition, how do you tell if your spring return damper is open or closed? Most of my competition will say I have to get up close to the damper. Well, that means you have to get on a ladder or crawl back through the attic or crawl back through a dirty crawl space to be able to see if your damper is open or closed. One of the very nice features about EWC is in 2004 we introduced the first zone damper with LED lights. These are true position indicator lights. If it's green, it is open. If it is red, it is closed. And you can see these lights anywhere between 70 and 80 feet, depending on how dark the space is that you have placed our damper. This light, this LED light, will only be off in 2 scenarios. It is moving in that 35-second transition from open to close or vice versa, or there is something wrong. When you wire these dampers in a daisy chain or series type situation, they operate very similar to the old style Christmas tree lights. If you had one bulb that was broke, the whole strand of lights would be dark. You had to find that one Christmas tree light, that one bulb, and replace it, and then all of your lights would come on. This operates very similar. If you have a loose wire or a loose connection or a cross wire on the EWC wiring from damper to damper, then if you have 6 dampers in that series and only 3 lights are illuminated when they are supposed to be, you know exactly where that short or that miswire or loose wire is. Obviously it's somewhere between dampers 3 and 4. Now when you're checking out a system, a lot of times the contractor will go damper to damper to make sure to look and see if that damper is open. This makes it very quick when you are checking out a system. These lights, being true position indicator lights, when you stick your head in an attic, you can see the call come to the board. You know that zone 1 is calling, and zone 1 will be, all the lights will be green. And zone 2 is not calling, meaning it is, the damper is actually closed, then all of those lights for that zone will be red. Makes it very quick and easy to commission your system to make sure that the correct dampers are opening and the dampers that are supposed to be closed are closed. One of the other features that contractors really love about our dampers are the minimum open, minimum close set points. This is basically making our damper, in addition to a zone damper, but a balancing damper. I can move this screw to a certain point and restrict the damper to close a certain amount, meaning it won't close all the way. I can also move this one, the minimum open, to where it won't open up all the way. It's a very nice feature. Most of my competition only give you the minimum close position. One of the other features that a lot of people don't realize that is so important, and this goes to the longevity of our dampers. If you notice, we have a motor actuator and a shaft that is non-metal. It is high torque nylon. That is exterior of the motor shaft. Most of my competition out there with the 2-wire spring return dampers, they have a small hot metal motor. And believe me, it gets hot. If you have ever opened up a ceiling tile and exposed a 2-wire damper, you can actually feel the heat coming off of it. Well, that hot metal motor has a metal shaft coming out of the bottom of that motor going down into the shell or the inside of the damper. Well, let's just say, for instance, that this damper is in a closed position and there is a lot of cold air that is restricted to come down here. In that event, you have a hot metal motor, a hot metal shaft, and a lot of cool air that is stopped here, that is against coming in contact with that hot metal shaft. There is a very significant chance that there will be a lot of condensation that is created at that juncture, allowing that condensation to very easily or possibly roll over and into that actuator. With our damper, like I said, it is a non-metal shaft, actually high torque nylon, that is exterior of the motor housing. So there's no heat or cooling that can get from motor to shaft and thereby going into the shell or the inside of that damper. Greatly increases the lifespan of these actuators. We actually had an actuator on our test bench at our factory that was mounted and started in August of 2005, and I believe it is still operating today, just going through open to close, close to open, open to close, very, very many millions of rotations. Moving along, I've talked about the actuator itself. As I've mentioned before, all of the actuators are exactly the same. But moving on to the actual construction of the actual damper. On this round URD damper, you will notice that we've got a male and female end. This allows you to go from a start collar and continue on with your round pipe going forward, or round pipe and flex duct from here. Really doesn't matter to us because we've put stiffening beads on the round dampers that also act as something to hold the flex on with your strap. This is 24 gauge galvanized metal. It's very robust and very strong. But I will say that sometimes after it's been on a job site, these dampers are not always truly round. We have tried to compensate for that by putting a pour-on cellular foam gasket inside of here, where our competition will glue a gasket, a foam gasket, and they will actually close the blade to the gasket. We've put this pour-on cellular foam gasket actually between two pieces of galvanized sheet metal, and the gasket moves with the shaft, making a very nice tight seal, and can compensate for a not so round damper. This also makes it very important step in innovation, because now we are not restricting the airflow with a gasket. My competition, like I said, they glue a gasket on the internal side. If I have a 4-inch damper, as I'm showing here, and a 1/2-inch gasket inside of here, ask yourself, do I have a 4-inch damper anymore? The question is no. Now you are having to increase your velocity to compensate for this restriction in here. I give you the full diameter of this damper except for the shaft, but everyone has the shaft, okay? Moving along, I should point out that this damper is available 4 through 20 inch. Most of my competition stops at 18, some of them even 16. Most of my competition do not offer a 4 or 5 inch, which we do have available. Moving along to the rectangle damper, we make this 8x6 through 30x30, and this is a 0.08 extruded aluminum rectangle damper. Probably 98% handmade. If you go on our website and watch some of our how-to videos, you will notice that most of these dampers, or all of these dampers for that matter, are built in a jig. They literally put piece by piece together and put the screws in, and they make 8x6s and goes down the line, and somebody puts a damper actuator on it, and they test it a couple times, and they put it in a box, and it arrives at the contractor like this. All right, so moving along with the construction of this damper, you will notice inside we have nylon bushings that we have incorporated in to keep the damper very quiet during its operation. This is very crucial because you need the damper to be able to move, but you don't want it to move very much because of the rattling noise or the whistling that you may get. So this is one of the tightest dampers in the industry. We have 97% closure, less than 3% leakage. You can barely see any light through that when you're looking at this damper. So it is one of the tightest dampers in the industry. Again, I make this 8x6 through 30x30, both bottom mount and side mount. And if the contractor needs a special size, we make those on the inch. So meaning I'm not going to make a 19.5. I'll make a 19. But I won't make a 19.25 or 19.5. We can ship those usually 3 days from receipt of order. Moving along to our retrofit damper, again, that's the same actuator as all the rest of them, with the same features and benefits that I went over earlier. This is our slip-in damper, or SID. This has truly innovated the retrofit industry. We make this 4 through 10 inch, and as you can see, it gives you a little bit better picture of the pour-on cellular foam gasket that we incorporated into the URD damper. This is very easy to install in a system. If you're looking at your supply plenum, your cold or heat runs would come off of that plenum. Right after that takeoff, you would cut a slot. This does come with a template for each size damper, and it will tell you exactly where to cut and how big to cut it. The most easiest way that I have found to install this, and the quickest, is contractors will take their step bit and make a hole approximately 3/4 of an inch that will accommodate the size of the shaft for the SID. And then you would take your electric shears, and you would go for a 6-inch damper. You would go 3 inches that way and 3 inches that way. This will take out some of the material, allowing just enough space to get the blade of the SID into that slot. And then you would have 4 zip screws that would mount that damper on the outside of this. That is by far the quickest way that we have found to install this damper, usually taking less than 5 minutes per damper. Then at that point, you would wire these dampers in series or in a daisy chain type situation, making your individual zones. So moving along with the control panel, this is our BM Plus line. It's available in 3, 5, and 7 zones. It's able to handle up to 3 stages of heat, 2 stages of cooling. It's heat pump compatible, and it has the dual fuel feature built in. This board makes it very user-friendly in the fact that 95% of any zoning job that you would go to, this board would be able to handle it. If you need a 3 zone, this out of the box will do the job. A BM Plus 5000 is able to handle your 4 and 5 zones. Very seldom will you get over 5 zones, but in the event that you need a 6 or 7 zone, order that BM plus 7,000 and take care of those 6 and 7 zone jobs that you would walk into. However, in the event that the homeowner calls you, the contractor, say that they wanted to add on to the already existing zone system, instead of having to buy a whole brand new panel, say a BM plus 5,000 or a BM plus 7,000, you would only have to buy an add-a-zone board, which is part number XM2, and that would be installed at this bus cable. Okay, so the add-a-zone board would come with that bus cable or ribbon strip, and it would plug into here, and it would be mounted somewhere in a fashion above this original BM plus 3000. You would then bring your new dampers to the panel. You would bring your new thermostat or thermostats to the panel because it is a 2-zone add-a-zone board. We can go from a BM plus 3000 in 2 zones at a time to a maximum of 7 zones, just as if you had bought the BM plus 7,000 originally. So this enables you to put add-a-zones after the fact without buying a whole new panel. The BM Plus, as I said before, will handle 3 stages of heat, 2 stages of cooling, heat pump, and dual fuel. In a dual fuel application, you will most likely want to purchase an additional OAS, which is an outdoor air sensor. Our supply air sensor is going to come with this board. That is needed to determine or to monitor our supply air temperature. In the event that it gets too hot or in the event that it gets too cold, you will set your potentiometers to those settings that you desire. On the cold side, you will have a setting from 34 to 52 degrees, and on the heating, you will have a setting from 110 to 170 degrees in 1 degree increments, as you can see by the potentiometer dial. As far as staging, like I said, it's 3 stages of heat, 2 stages of cooling, and in the dual fuel application, you actually set your outdoor balance point on this left-hand staging potentiometer. This left-hand staging potentiometer is either time or outdoor air temperature. By selecting on the dip switch time or outdoor air sensor, that determines what this is monitoring. If you set it to OAS, it's 7 to 42 degrees. If you set it to time, it is 7 to 42 minutes. Very unique feature in this board. With a very cheap, economical, standard heat-cool thermostat or heat pump stat, I can, with an outdoor air sensor costing less than 30 bucks, I can operate a dual fuel situation without the need of a very expensive thermostat that has dual fuel built into it. One of the other key features that we have employed with the BM Plus line, and for that matter all of our zone boards, is our protection system. This is a thermal circuit breaker, little poly fuse. In the event that there is a short in your system between dampers and our board and thermostats and our board, it will recognize that abnormal power supply, and it will shut down to protect itself. If the short is left there for a small amount of time, this polyfuse will become warm to the touch. And that's your first indication that something is wrong. You come up here and you feel of it, oh, it's warm, that means you're off on thermal overload and you have a short, thereby allowing you or indicating that you need to go and identify that short. And once that short is identified and corrected, this polyfuse will reset all by itself, therefore eliminating the need or causing the board to be damaged and get a new board. Always check to make sure that this is not off on thermal overload. It's always best if you get to the job site and there is a problem with the board to call our engineering department at 1-800 446-3110 and ask for our technical department and have them assist you in going through and diagnosing whether or not this board has been damaged or not. Typically, the boards that come back to us, there's usually nothing wrong with the boards. We put them through their testing procedures and determine that there's nothing wrong when you could, just by a simple 5-minute phone call, you could have ascertained that information and corrected the issue and been on to your next job, putting money in your pocket. So ouing on and setting this board up. Very simple. It is a dip switch oriented board, only 8 dip switches to help you set up this board. And very quickly I will go through these dip switches, and the first one is what is your system? Is it a heat pump or is it something other like a gas furnace? You'll move the dip switch to the right for a gas and left for if it's a heat pump. If your system is a heat pump, the second dip switch asks you, is it a dual fuel heat pump or is it a traditional conventional style heat pump? The third dip switch is, what thermostats are you using? Are they heat cool or are they heat pump? You just select which one you are using. One of the key features or nice features about EWC boards is I allow you to use either of those 2 types of thermostats. I can put a heat cool thermostat on a heat pump system. That does save you a little bit of money. The fourth dip switch is telling the board, am I an O-type or am I a B-type reversing valve? So you just, if it's a heat pump, you're going to need to select that. It comes out of the factory as an O-type reversing valve. That dip switch means nothing if you selected a gas type furnace. Obviously, there's no O-type or B-type reversing valve in that type of system. So the fifth dip switch that I will talk about is, how do you want to stage the equipment? Now, obviously, if your system is a single stage heat, single stage cool, there will be no staging. This is for a multi-stage 2 heat or 3 heat, 2 cool system. You would select either time, which is going to be the normal way or out of the box setting. This is your timing staging, meaning if you had set this dip switch at 14 minutes, this will allow in first stage to operate it up to 14 minutes. If at 14 minutes it has not satisfied the thermostat, that will allow the board to transition into its next stage or higher stage of heating or cooling. If you had selected outdoor air sensor, meaning that you have installed an ancillary outdoor air sensor over here on the top right hand terminal block for a dual fuel situation, then that would change the potentiometer setting from 7 to 42 minutes to 77 to 42 degrees. The next dip switch option, the 50% rule, is a feature on the board that allows you to restrict the board from going to the higher stage of heating. Meaning, or to better explain it, do you want one zone out of 3 zones to be able to bring on a higher stage of heating? In most cases, the answer to that would be no. So if you engage the 50% rule, meaning you turn it on, the board recognizes how many zones are on this board. On this board, for example, the BM Plus is 3 zones maximum capacity. The 50% rule states that more than 50% of the available zones must be calling for the same mode. So if you only have 2 zones connected to this 3-zone board, both of those zones would have to be calling for the same mode before I will allow that system to go to the higher stage. The supplier sensor dip switch is going to come up from us in the off position. When you install the supplier sensor, we need you to turn that on. This last dip switch is your fan selection switch. it is either gas or hydro. It's going to come from us defaulted to the gas, meaning do you want the fan to delay until it turns on, or do you want the fan to come on immediately upon equipment startup? You also have many LED lights to give you a diagnostic tool to tell whether or not something is operating, what zone is calling, what zones are not calling. Am I in first stage or second stage? Am I, do I have a Y1 call? Do I have a W1 call? All of those are directly in line with the coil relay on your furnace or air handler. Very good diagnostic tools. Any thermostat can be used. Like I said before, your damper terminal blocks on the BM Plus are set up to be able to handle 2-wire and 3-wire power open, power closed dampers. Your thermostats are all wired in over here on your thermostat terminal block side. And you also have a emergency heat selection switch. If you remember in the beginning, I mentioned that with EWC you can use both heat cool and heat pump stats on this board. And if you were to put a heat cool stat on a heat pump system, the heat cool stat doesn't have an emergency heat selection switch that allows the homeowner to go to the thermostat and manually turn on emergency heat. If you use the heat cool stat on a heat pump system, that forces the homeowner to come to the emergency heat selection switch and turn the emergency heat on. I personally, I don't like homeowners coming to the board to make adjustments. That creates service calls. I, for one, and EWC do not like service calls because that puts a bad taste in the homeowner's mouth and will commonly create a bad reputation for the contractor. So my personal opinion is, in a heat pump situation, put a heat pump stat on. So moving along and wrapping this up, we need to talk about how EWC handles excess capacity or that excess static pressure when not all zones are calling at the same time. We do that by a couple different methods. EWC has been very innovative in developing new and better ways to handle that excess capacity. First and foremost, and probably the most economical, would be our CLBD, which we did away with the old weighted arm barometric bypass that we all grew to have a love-hate relationship with over the years. Many people could not figure out how to set it up or how to install it. It was very cumbersome. It was very hard to set up because it mostly became a guessing game with moving the weights up and down a metal arm or a shaft. And do I put the shaft in the 7 o'clock position, or do I put it in a 5 o'clock position? So what we did is we developed what we think is a better way and a more accurate way to handle that excess capacity. So you're going to obviously make a bypass loop coming out of the supply and bringing that loop back into the return. And we want to tie that into the return side at least enough room or distance away from the equipment to allow that air to mix and moderate with the return air coming back into the system. We want to tie that into the return enough upstream of the system, allowing that bypass air to mix with the return and to warm up or cool down depending on what the operation of the system is. Once you have that installed, then you're going to be able to, with a simple turn of a screw, set the static pressure at which you want this damper to open and close. I know it might be a little hard to see, but this will open up, and we've actually put a window on the front of the damper so you can actually see the blade of the damper operate when this is installed. This is adjustable from 0.4 to 0.8 inches of water column. It can be installed vertically or horizontally. Unlike the old weighted arm barometric bypass, where it had to be installed in a horizontal position, this allows you the freedom to install it both vertical or horizontal. We make this in sizes 8 through 16. We still have available the old PRD, which is our weighted arm. It's still weighted arm, but it is one of the only rectangle weighted arm bypasses out there in the industry, and that's still available. Moving forward to a more accurate and easy to install bypass is our Smart Bypass, or SBD. Contractors are quickly becoming very familiar with this, as it is the easiest to set up, and it is very, very accurate. Coming with the SBD, you will get tubing and you will get pitot tubes, which will be installed in the supply and the return. From the supply into the positive side of the built-in sensor. From the return side to the negative side of the sensor. We have a built-in digital manometer that's made into this actuator. Once you have those installed and you have a dedicated 24-volt power supply to this damper, you will have a couple lights that will be illuminated here. You will have a system light that will be green, and you will have a blinking yellow light. The blinking yellow light is the bypass setup button. Once you have your system operating in your most critical type situation, you want the highest output in fan, you want the highest output in system output. You want all the zone dampers that I have gone over previously in this series. You want all of those in the open position. You'd like to have a clean air filter. Let your system pressurize the ductwork for 3 to 5 minutes, at which point you will push the bypass setup button. This will send this smart bypass into its automatic setup mode, or learning mode, if you will. You will stand back and actually watch this damper operate and go through its setup process. It will go through a step where it will go to the close side and it will hold there for approximately 10 seconds. It will then capture that static pressure and put it into its built-in memory bank. Even through a power failure, that is a static number. It will not ever lose that. When it gets done with that, it will automatically rotate to the open side. Again, it will hold there for approximately 10 seconds and capture a static pressure, again putting it in the memory bank. Now, if it has captured static pressures within the parameters that we have set for, the green light will remain on and the blinking light will go out, and you are done. Now, as the system goes through first stage heat, first stage cooling, 1 zone calling, 2 zone calling, the SBD will constantly modulate to hold it to that baseline static pressure that it captured in its learning mode. Makes for a very, very nice, quiet system. And what you're trying to achieve in a zone system is when you put it on there, the zone system doesn't, or the heating and cooling system doesn't know there is a zone system, and it doesn't know that there is a bypass. It works very seamlessly and makes the overall system work very well. We also make this 8-inch through 16-inch, and we also make it in any size of our rectangle dampers that we offer. Now, in the event that you go to a job site and he is determined that the system that he is looking at and the homeowner wants zoning, but there's just not enough room to put one of these and the associated ductwork that must be installed to install one of these. If there's not enough room for that, Historically, you would probably walk away from that job because the system needed that bypass, that ability to handle that excess capacity. And in those situations, like I said, you would walk away. And in the summer of 2023, EWC introduced the DAPC. The DAPC is a very unique feature board where, in addition to the zone board, you would wire the DAPC from the zone board to the DAPC. You're just powering it from the original zone board. And from this DAPC, you would bring your damper wiring from this board to the dampers. So from the board, your dampers to this board to the dampers. In the setup of this board, you will go into the menu and set up the board. The very most crucial feature of the setup would be the static pressure that you want this system to operate. It comes from us set at a 0.5 inch static pressure. You can change that, or you can allow this board to discover the static pressure through its commissioning setup. If you choose to just leave it at the 0.5, then when zones are calling or not calling, and the pitot tubes that you install into the supply and the return measures that static pressure, and when it increases or goes above the static pressure that you have set, this board will automatically open the zones that are not calling, or the zones that you have told it to open those dampers toward the open position, thereby keeping that static pressure below the set point that you have set in this board. Now, you can use anybody's board, but you have to use EWC, ND, URD, or SID dampers. This is a very unique board in the fact that it can go on anybody's system, and it allows you to zone just about any system that you would run into. If you, as a contractor, ever have any questions, technical questions or install questions, you can always refer back to the install instructions, or you can call our technical department. We have a dedicated technical department that is operational from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern Time, where you would talk directly to the guys that design, build, and test this stuff, our products, on a daily basis. We also have an app that you can download to your phone that will, in the palm of your hand, give you the ability to size a bypass, install instructions, wiring diagrams, picking out a system, submittal data sheets. All of those are in the palm of your hand. In the event that you should need my assistance for technical advice, for job site visits, or designing or help in designing a system, you can always reach out to me at 859-230-7656. Thank you.